Hi everyone. In this video, we're going to be covering a lecture around what UI UX design is, and we'll be talking a little bit about Figma, but mostly about what UI UX stands for, what this design discipline includes, what the process looks like, and just some relevant examples to help us understand why it matters and why it exists. So let's begin. What is UI UX? So UI UX is the design and prototype of digital products and experiences. So when we think about UI UX, we're actually talking about the design of a mobile app or a web app or a website. So UI stands for user interface, and the interface design of an app refers to the visual layout, format, and visual design of what your app or website looks like. UX stands for user experience, which refers to the experience of an app or website. So what this could look like could be what is the service that your app is providing, and even what are the interactions, what buttons does the user have to press to get to where they want to go or to receive the service that your app is providing. So let's look at an example. So this is Shazam. Shazam is a mobile app that allows users to discover the name and artist of a song that is being played out loud. So let's think about what the UX and UI of this app is. So we just said that UX is the experience of an app. So when a user gets into this app, what are they experiencing? Well, they are experiencing the ability to be able to identify a song that is being played. And to do this, through the app, they will press this big button in the middle, following these instructions to either long press or tap in order to Shazam. And so the UX would be this experience of coming onto the app, tapping or holding this button, and receiving the information about the song that is being played. And the UI would be the design from this font to this button design to this logo and to the layout of like this little song card that pops up once the user plays the song and Shazams it. And so UI UX really go hand in hand because UX is the user's experience of the platform, and UI is a translation of this experience onto a visual and digital design. So both are equally important. So let's look at this diagram in order to look at some skills that are involved in UI UX. I like this figure a lot because it shows us what the different focuses of UX and UI are, but also what the overlapping in skills and processes look like. So UX is a focus on product strategy, user research, information architecture, testing, and iteration. Basically, UX is the focus on what your app is, what it's providing, what are the different features, and what is the user doing or experiencing when they use your app or website. UI is, on the other hand, focuses more on these graphic design principles of what your app or website actually looks like. So the UX is sort of like um, the foundations of the building, while the UI is like the facade. But both are equally important to this experience, and you can't have one without the other if you want to have a nice building. And so the skills involved in both are empathy, collaboration, design thinking, and prototyping. If you've done design of any other kind, these are skills that are important to design across industries, across types of design, but very relevant in UI UX as well. So when we talk about where does UI UX happen, we mostly talk about desktop websites and phone and tablet devices. And the reason we break these two up is Firstly, because the screen size on the devices are a bit different. So for desktop and computers, the screen is a bit larger, whereas for phone and tablet, the screen's going to be a bit smaller. And we also think about how the users are interacting with the device and the interface. For computer and desktop websites, the user can use like a cursor or a mouse, and they're able to click, hover, drag. Whereas for a phone or tablet, the user is using their fingers primarily. So you can still tap and drag and do different things, but the interactions might look different. For phone, zooming in might be to like pinch or um, and that might not exist for a website. And for a website, the user also has a bit more mobility on the screen, and so they can probably process more information um, on a specific screen at once. Whereas for phone and tablet, because this device is smaller, you might not want to have as much features on one page at a time. So these are all things to think about. But when we think about tools for UI UX design, we're mostly going to be looking to use Figma. Figma has become the industry standard tool and software for UI UX to happen. It used to be Adobe XD, but since then, Figma has really developed their software and app and is now what most professionals use and is also more user-friendly and has more capabilities, I would say, than Adobe XD. I also wanted to discuss a little bit about the difference between UI UX design and versus web design. So on the surface, you are probably likely designing similar things, such as like the interface, the interactions, and the features. But I think what differentiates UI UX from web design is that UI UX, you're much more early in the stage of design of like, what could this app or website look like? And what are the different buttons that I want? Whereas web design, you're actually building this design to be real. So the output of UI UX would be like a clickable prototype or screens that show you what this app or website would look like, but it wouldn't actually be like a live website or app that you could download at the App Store that you can access through Google. And that's what web design would actually be, which would also mean that it involves more coding because you're actually building this design and making it real. Whereas UI UX, you're mostly focusing on what this design is, what it looks like, and handing that off to engineers to build. So what does the UI UX design process look like? I love talking about the process because it just makes UI UX feel more approachable, and it breaks down the different steps of how to get from an idea to a final product. So we always start with a bit of research, understand. So understanding what the problem or service that you're designing is really important. Becoming clear on what your idea is and what the experience is the first step to making your design. It's also important to identify who your target audience is, who your users are. A lot of times, this might even just be the general public, but even then, diving into what their pain points are, why they would use this app, when they would use this app. All of this information is really important and valuable to inform your design. Okay, and then moving on to competitor research and market analysis. If you're coming up with an idea, it's always important to look at what exists already. This can serve as an inspiration for your design, but it can also let you know, okay, if something similar already exists, how can I make my idea different? How can I make it more valuable or provide a different value? What am I providing that does not already exist? And then when we're looking at the UI side for research, we're thinking about what our brand identity is. What are the colors we might use? What are the fonts we might use? And so for this phase, when I'm thinking about UI planning, it might look like looking at existing apps, compiling designs that I like, or even mood boards for graphic design, how they lay out the words, how they use imagery. anything that might feel relevant to what I'm trying to create, I'm going to capture that during this phase. And the next step would be to plan and sketch your app idea. So, like I mentioned before, information architecture refers to the different pages, the different ways of getting from one page to another, and the different features of your design. And so this is when you start sketching out what are the components to my design. Am I going to have a navigation bar? Am I going to have an onboarding process? What are the different pages I need in my design to make it complete? Um, and so one part, the UX part would be maybe listing out the different pages or even using like a digital whiteboard tool to map out your different pages and what's within each page and how you get from one page to the other. And then the UI aspect of planning would be to start sketching what your app could look like based on the different pages and assets that you want to bring in. And I'll be showing an example of what these sketches look like. And the third step is to wireframe and prototype. And what this means is that you're taking your sketch and you're making it digital now. You're starting to box out what your app would look like. Maybe you're using placeholder images. Maybe you're creating low fidelity buttons. But you're starting to make your sketches feel more real. And for this first prototype, I usually recommend a low to medium fidelity, which means that you want it to be working, you want it to feel like the bare bones of what your design would be. You don't have to worry as much about like the colors or the images. Maybe that all comes in later, but in this phase for this prototype, you're really focusing on like this concept and the user flow, the flow from one page to another, um, and and just placing and making tangible the different aspects of your design. And so the fourth step after you make your first prototype would be to do some user testing. It's really important throughout this process that you're validating your design with real people, having real people try your app or website so that you can make sure it's understandable and you can learn from their experiences. And so you would conduct usability tests and collect qualitative feedback. When you're doing this, you can consider what tasks you want to have the user. Maybe you want the user to create a new account if you're testing the onboarding experience. Or maybe you want the user to upload a photo. Are they able to navigate to where they need to do that? Those are important tasks to test, especially when it comes to being able to use your app and making sure that your app is providing the service and value that you want it to. And this relates to UI in terms of like where users might get stuck, where they might be confused, or where certain information doesn't come out the way that you want it to. And after you collect all of this feedback and information, you go back into your design on Figma or whatever software you use, but probably Figma, and you make some updates. You make your updates based on the feedback you got during your user testing. And during this phase, you're also refining your prototype after you've made these changes to look more finalized. And you're adding in those colors, you're adding in that imagery to make it look more polished and final. And then after you finish your prototype, maybe adding some animations or flows, you can either decide if you want to test it again, or if you're ready to present. And there are many ways to present your Figma file. One of them being like a click through where you're actually clicking through the different buttons or letting your audience or user explore the app. Or maybe you create a recording of what you want the flow to look like, and it's more of like a video that you produce. But this is what the general flow of UI UX design looks like. So let's look at some examples. Here's an example of what a low fidelity prototype or wireframe looks like. So this one is more of a sketch. It's not, I wouldn't say it's even like a low I guess it is a low fidelity prototype, but it wouldn't be a medium fidelity prototype. And then this would be a high fidelity prototype where you can kind of see the difference. But I think what's cool is that just by sketching, you can start to get an idea of what you want to build. And these sketches will make your building process of like visualizing and making it more polished and high fidelity so much easier because you already know what it should look like. So this one provides us with an example of a low, medium, and high fidelity. The low fidelity being a sketch, the medium fidelity being something that feels more real. It's digital. It has all of these aspects, but maybe we're just testing the usability of it. Maybe we're just testing that the buttons feel right before we do all of these colors and effects that bring it to that high fidelity stage. And now we're going to show some examples and of why UI UX design matters. So this is an example of someone's redesign of Craigslist. So this on the left is what Craigslist looked like before they redesigned it. And this is what Craigslist looks like after this designer redesigned it. And even though it is the same concept, the same idea. The experience is really different just because of how the interface is designed. Um, this example on the left, there's not a lot of visual hierarchy. You have these separations of these three different sections, and then within this middle section, some specific lists and categories. But when you look at it, it just kind of looks like a Word document or a list of words. Whereas this example on the right, it's a lot more designed. I know that I can interact by going through this search. That's very clear. But I also have these tabs up top to browse different categories. And just one more example. This one, we're looking at the CUNY First Home website, which is one of Baruch College's sort of dashboard websites. This is more of like a faculty view, but I think that the student view is similar. And I think it's just interesting to compare this example with something that feels a bit more designed. Um, if we look at this CUNY first example, there's a bunch of these different modules, but they all kind of have the same visual hierarchy other than the size. And so as a user, it can be kind of hard to navigate what all of this is. I would just have to read through every single one. Whereas in this design on the right, there's a lot more organization. And I know, like, if I want to look at upcoming classes, I don't have to read through all of these to know that they're upcoming classes because they have this title and this section. And so this is just an example of how powerful UI UX design can be in aiding the user to find what they want and in their experience. And overall, if your user has a better experience, they're more likely to use your platform, they're more likely to buy your product, etc. They're much more likely to engage and have a positive experience engaging. And that is essentially what UI UX design is.